Hello and welcome to Post Sports Live, Winter Storm Juno edition. I'm Gene Wang. I hope everyone is staying warm and dry, most importantly safe on this snowy Tuesday. A lot to get to today after another busy week. Fortunately, we have three of the best and brightest from the Washington Post sports staff to help us sort out the sports stories that matter to you in the DMV and nationally. Starting with, in the first chair, Mr. Fancy Stats and Neil Greenberg. In the middle chair, Mike Hume, national sports editor, and to my left, columnist and original DC sports blog, Dan Steinberg. And Mike, I don't know about Neil and Dan, but I wanted in my evaluation record that I went above and beyond to make it here during the snow to host this program today. Can you make that happen for me?
We'll see what we can do.
Okay,
we'll make
fantastic.
some calls.
What are we talking about today? Well, we got a lot to get to. Obviously, off the top, it's going to be what else? The Super Bowl. Then after that, we'll bring the conversation back to the nation's capital with the Washington Redskins, the Washington Wizards, and the Washington Capitals. And we'll wrap up the show with a look at several of our area men's college basketball teams. But off the top, we are 5 days out from Super Bowl 49 between the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks. The Patriots are going for their fourth Super Bowl and first in 10 years in the Coach Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era. Meantime, the Seattle Seahawks are looking to be the first team to repeat since those same Patriots in 04 and 05. New England enters obviously amid the distraction of Deflategate. Seattle comes in after one of the most stirring comebacks we've seen in sports. Dan Steinberg, with that in mind, which one of these two teams has a more compelling narrative going into Super Bowl 49?
I mean, it's got to be the Patriots, I think. The whole Deflategate thing, I initially had the common reaction, which was, this is stupid, I'm over it. But now that it's kind of gone to this next level of absurdity, and now I'm loving it. Like yesterday, the Robert Kraft stuff, that was great. That was terrific. And I mean, it's almost like the Seahawks are irrelevant right now. Going for back-to-back Super Bowls, no one's even talking about that at all. So I think that it's got to be the Patriots right now, and it's going to be a zoo for the rest of the week.
Well, Mike, do you see the Seahawks being kind of written off the storyline here? And what do you think the more compelling backstory is?
First of all, if I'm the Seahawks, I'm loving this because you can just lie in the weeds. Everyone's not paying any attention to you, focused on the scandal of the Patriots, not even the game. So it's a great position for them to be in. But yeah, the Patriots are the bigger storyline. I mean, even if you ignore all the Deflategate stuff, which is impossible to do, you still have a quarterback who's trying to firmly entrench himself as a legend, a coach who's trying to become the best of all time. Right. You have a guy like Darrelle Revis, who is nowhere on the radar, going for his first Super Bowl ring, arguably one of the best corners in the modern era. So it's clearly the Patriots. The Deflategate stuff just takes it to a whole nother level, and I'm really interested to see a little bit more about this clubhouse attendant in the bathroom, personally.
We're not trying to reenact that right now. Yeah.
Well, are you going to make this a consensus and say it is the New England Patriots that has the most compelling storyline?
Well, it's clearly the Patriots, but there's so many underlying storylines for the Seahawks that aren't being talked about. We talked about them going for back-to-back Super Bowls for the first time since the Patriots did it. Yeah. They could be a budding dynasty, right? I mean, this is a young team. They're talking about locking up Russell Wilson for quite a while. They have the Legion of Boom locked up, a lot of young players. They do a lot of things right. But to me, the Seahawks team hasn't won the way other teams win. We're in an offense, a league where the offense is dominated by passers. Sure. They're going to be they could be a Super Bowl team with the least amount of yards passing almost ever once you adjust for error. And last year they didn't pass all that much. This year it's even less. So this is a team that likes to run the football, and while they do have a marquee type franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson, and he's in the high-flying aerial act that we're used to seeing in Super Bowls past.
Well, Mike, how about the Marshawn Lynch stuff? There's a backstory right there. That's kind of interesting. I know it's not Deflategate, but everyone loves talking about the Skittles, and it's always something that gravitates to Marshawn Lynch, right?
Well, there are a couple other Skittles of interest to the NFL.
Yes, there are.
That will be discussed, I'm sure, at length today at Media Day. But yeah, he's a performer from the sense that we can't get enough of his act. Yeah. So, on one hand, we eat it up, and the other hand, we're saying this is terrible conduct. It's unbecoming of the game. It's unbecoming of the league. But he's great theater.
And wait, when you were saying a couple other Skittles, was that like a double entendre thing or not?
You're picking up what I'm putting down, Dan.
You don't find anything compelling about the Seattle Seahawks? Is it all Patriots 100% of the time for you?
I didn't say that. Personally, I don't. The Lynch stuff doesn't really interest me that much. The whole talking to the media thing, I could not possibly care less about that one. And even the grabbing his private parts. Sports, what a life.
Is that where you're going to laugh out of it?
What a profession we have here. I mean, I really find some of it kind of distasteful. How media members react to the Lynch stuff. So yeah, that one doesn't do it for me. I mean, Richard Sherman. Is
I was going to say he's always a guy you can look to for something interesting to say, right?
God, just talking about this reminds me of how terrible Super Bowl week is and how glad I'm not in Arizona.
It is really bad. There's people ask them about their wives' cookbooks. They ask them about stuff that has nothing to do with the Super Bowl.
They ask them about the stuff that we're talking about on the show.
Yeah, they do, but they have to fill 2 weeks, right?
No, I know we do too. But it just reminds me that. Yeah, it was one of the worst things I've ever covered, being at the Super Bowl.
Have you ever seen Bill Belichick have a news conference like he had about Deflategate?
That's
one
he
of the
gave
greatest,
one answer. I think still going
he wins
on.
The press conferences. I mean, there's not even, it's all over, right?
The Kraft stuff was wacky though, because Sherman was accusing Kraft and Goodell of being like buddy hanging out together, and all of a sudden Kraft is saying that he demands an apology.
I know.
Yeah, Michael Corleone style.
It's fantastic stuff. But let's actually get to the game right now and some of the matchups. And Neil, I'll ask you for a bold prediction in the Super Bowl.
I think the Patriots win this because the Legion of Boom is probably a little bit more banged up than they're letting on. I mean, Richard Sherman was playing with one hand the last in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Earl Thomas is banged up a little bit. I think that this is, and the Patriots are going to come out with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. But I say Patriots win, and it's because the Legion of Boom is hurt, like legitimately hurt.
Mike, where do you stand on that?
I'm with Neil. I think the Patriots have the edge. They're going to come out with every legal trick in the book. You're going to see a lot of zone blitzes, a lot, instances where they're going to rush 2 guys and drop a lot of guys into coverage, spy on Russell Wilson and keep him in the pocket. I think when it comes to game planning, there's no one better in the business than Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And those injuries probably are going to come into play. I like the personnel on the Seahawks better if they're entirely healthy, but the experience, the trickeration, I like the Pats.
Cheating.
Yeah,
Dan,
cheating.
we saw the 2 teams that beat.
I don't know what the bold predictions were in those. Is that the favorite team is going to win? Is that the bold?
Well, they're favored by a point.
Is that a bold prediction?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, we know the Patriots are not perfect.
We'll talk about the game.
The Patriots in the Brady Belichick era are not perfect.
There
They
will be
lost
no
twice
cheating. That's my bold
to
prediction.
the New York Giants, who got pressure on Brady. We saw what the Seahawks did last year to Peyton Manning,
Including once in Arizona.
Yeah, including one of the greatest defenses
in
maybe in this generation. Certainly, do you give the Seattle? Are you picking the Seattle Seahawks?
I don't really know who I'm picking for the game, but the question was a bold prediction, and my bold prediction is going to be that Russell Wilson outproduces Tom Brady. When you count rushing yards and passing yards, I'm going to say Russell Wilson outproduces. And I think there's, before the championship games, a bookmaker in Vegas told our Adam Kilgore that a Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl, the Seahawks would be favored by 2.5 points. Yeah. Obviously, some of this is the injuries, but I think people maybe overreact a little bit to the scores of the previous week's game. I mean,
2/3 of the money are on the Patriots.
Yeah,
minus
public team.
Yeah.
So I kind of do like the Seahawks a little bit, but I think Russell Wilson's not going to do what he did last week. He's not going to throw 4 interceptions or whatever it was.
Yeah, it seems like the people are kind of forgetting the Patriots did lose to a team that can put pressure on you, and that Seahawks can do. But we'll see what happens, right, as they say. So, but let's go to a team that is nowhere near the Super Bowl yet, the Washington Redskins, who have made another offseason move, hiring Joe Barry as the defensive coordinator. Mike, I'll come to you on this first. What should be his first priority in fixing that unit?
Well, he needs to extinguish the dumpster fire, first of all. The best way to do that would be to address the secondary. A couple of different ways he can come at it. I'll leave Neil to discuss one because I know he's going to talk on personnel in a little bit. But I think he needs to address the pass rush, too. I mean, they're going to have a high draft pick. There are a lot of good, talented pass rushers available in this draft class. If they can get somebody to pair with Ryan Kerrigan, suddenly the secondary looks a lot better just because the quarterback has a lot less time to operate.
Sure.
Those Super Bowl teams from the Giants era, they never had great secondaries. They had great pass rushers. Mm-hmm. So it's probably the fastest way to solve that problem is to get another pass rusher up front to help Kerrigan.
Well, Neil, what does Joe Barry need to do to fix the defense, or what should be his first priority?
I think he needs to resign first because I don't think he's going to make that big of an impact. But if he decides to stay, it's got to be the secondary. I mean, this secondary is not good by any stretch of the imagination. Ryan Clark is going to be gone. Brashad Breeland, he has a lot of room to grow. He played okay, and there's some spark there. But there was for David Amerson as well, and he turned out to be terrible. So there's a lot of holes in the secondary. And I think the pass rush is good for right now enough. I think that the secondary is terrible. It's probably the worst in the league, and that includes like Jacksonville. I mean, that includes some of the dregs of the NFL.
Raheem Morris, the departure.
Yeah. So maybe it's addition by subtraction in some ways, but they need to use the draft, especially the first couple of picks, to address that secondary.
Well, Dan, if you had Joe Barry's ear for a few minutes, what would you tell him the priority should be to fix the defense?
I mean, I think they know that probably 9 out of the 11 starters last year are not long-term fixes. So you could say anything. I mean, you could say you need a pass rusher to go with Kerrigan. You could say the secondary, which seems obvious. I think you could also say you need to get some youth up front because from Jason Hatcher to Stephen Bowen to Barry Cofield, these guys are on the wrong side of an NFL
They
career.
are.
They're football.
Some of the young players they brought in, Chris Baker, I think. I'm not sure if he's really a guy that you want to rely on.
Yeah.
Jarvis Jenkins, I'm not sure. So, I mean, they need help everywhere. But I think in addition to what these guys said, you need some youth up front.
So is this more of a McLuhan thing than it is a Joe
That's
Barry
the thing.
thing?
I mean, we're not even at the point of talking schematics yet because it doesn't seem like they have the talent that it matters that much.
Do you think there's any thought of going to a 4-3? Like, do you think that that's going to be on the table at all? Because that, to me, could make some sense if they start to get the right
Well,
pieces.
here's the thing. When you're the Redskins, I think you have to explore every avenue. Is that not the case? I mean, clearly what you're doing now is not working, so something's got to change,
they've
particularly on
indicated that
defense.
they don't want to.
I know,
they
but
don't want to do that.
But maybe that's the right move. I mean, maybe it's easier to get those pieces.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. Does some of what's on Joe Barry's resume concern you? Because we've written about it. A lot of other outlets have written about it, too.
I mean, it doesn't seem like he has the best pedigree
Yeah.
for this position, and I think this is a mistake that they've made in the past. From the head coach on down, when you look at Jim Zorn, I mean, this is a traditional Redskins hire that hasn't worked in the past. I would have liked to see somebody with a little bit more experience. I'm a big Wade Phillips guy,
Yeah.
but this seems like more of the same. I'm a little concerned.
Okay, well, let's go to a team that has built well and is gearing up for a playoff run, potentially a long playoff run in the Eastern Conference. We're talking, of course, about the Washington Wizards, who have bounced back from a losing streak. They've bounced back from multiple losing streaks this season. So, Dan, let me ask you, do you have faith that they can still keep moving up after yet another losing streak?
Well, it's not even just losing streaks. It's kind of any adversity they've been bouncing back from. And,
Right.
and certainly in a way that I think past Wizards teams haven't. Even the game in Denver, they had that game won in regulation. Then they almost had it lost at the end of regulation. But, on the road, the second night of a back-to-back, West Coast road trip, we've said it all year. These are the kind of games that this franchise has just always struggled to win, and now they're winning them. And so I think it's road trips, it's playing on the road, it's back-to-backs, it's losing streaks, all these things. And the reason that they're doing it is because they have talent and they're a good team. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't think it's like they've got some kind of button inside their sternums that's allowing them to bounce back from this stuff. It's just they're good now. They're a good team, and they're winning a lot of games that they should win.
Well, there have been good teams who have not maximized their talent. I think the Wizards are coming close to
Yeah, I mean,
maximizing their talent. Would you disagree with that, or?
I mean, I don't know if they're total. I think there's certainly games that they've lost that they could have won. But
Yeah.
I think for the most part, they're winning the games that they should win. And a lot of these toss-up games, that game in Denver, they're better than Denver, but it's the second night of a back-to-back. It's on the road. It's in altitude. It's easily a game that they could have won, especially when it goes into overtime. And I don't know if they're maximizing their talent, but they're certainly coming pretty close.
Well, Mike, when you have a player like John Wall, he certainly can help you get out of a losing streak, and he's been great in games after losses.
Absolutely. He's very poised. I mean, you want the ball in his hands. There's not a lot he can't do. I mean, he's leading the league in assists. He plays great defense. I think he's number 2 in steals. He can get his own shot. He has his own dribble, as Dan's pointed out. I mean, we have one of the best point guards in the NBA here. I think there's no question of that. And having a guy at the controls who has talent and poise, it's a great combination, a great starting point to bounce back from a losing skid.
He's the guy you want to lean on, right, Neil, when you're trying to come out of a losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, I think more so this is what we see. This is like the last stage of growing pains on these championship caliber teams, right? When they finally learn how to put the opponent out, right? To knock them out fourth quarter, close out games that they should have. There's less talk of, they should have won that game, they let that game slide away, and there's more talk of they put the opponent away. That's the hallmark of championship teams. That's probably the last piece of the puzzle for this Wizards team to get from where they are into the next level is right now. Is just playing well in the fourth quarter, winning games that they absolutely should win, and not letting good teams, bad teams back in the game late in the game.
Let's talk about one thing. Can I talk about one thing that they should be doing a little bit better?
Please.
It seems unclear who's going to take the last shot for them when they need a last shot. It happens at the end of quarters all the time where Wall just kind of dribbles around randomly and then chucks something up. And it happened against the Thunder. It happened in Denver where he lost the ball at the end of the game there, and Fareed almost had a breakaway layup to win the game. I think it's kind of unclear what their plan is at the end of the game if they need a winning shot.
Well, do you not think, though, that in some ways that can help them because teams can't necessarily game plan or scheme for it. If it's Paul Pierce or Bradley Beal, those two guys
Well, I
can
think
get shots,
that
right?
teams are scheming for it apparently because right now the plan is John Wall throws up a bad shot.
Yeah, or it makes it a lot easier for other teams because no one can make the
guys,
shot.
they're 30 and 15. They're in second place in the East. Clearly, they're doing something right at the end of games, right? I mean,
I think it's an issue. I think it's going to be an issue, and it was an issue in the playoff series against Indiana last year. I don't know that it's necessarily been fixed.
okay, well, speaking of teams that are having issues, the Washington Capitals that had been playing well going to the All-Star break, then as they hit that break, 3 straight losses, 2 in regulation. Neil, I'll ask you this. What corrections are needed in the second half so they can get back out of this and become a winning team again?
I think they need to make a decision on Mike Green and decide what they're going to do with him because he's probably the team's best all-around defender. And maybe that's because he's playing less minutes. Maybe that's because he's playing a little bit softer competition. But when he's on the ice, the Washington Capitals are a much better team. They should play him more when they have a lead. They would also alleviate some of the same problems we're seeing with the Wizards, which is they're letting teams back in. They're losing games very late that they should win. So I think the decision needs to be made on Mike Green. Personally, I would keep him for the end of the season and part ways at the end because you're not going to get enough value for Mike Green in terms of trade, so just keep him. But I think it's time to lean on him a little bit more heavily in the stretch run this season.
Mike, what do the Caps have to do better to get back on track?
I think it's a focus issue. I mean, you look at these last 3 results. Nashville, it was just an awful mental mistake by Matt Niskanen that he doesn't normally make, passing through the center of the zone.
Can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that in the NHL.
Yeah.
He knows that.
Yeah.
And then the second 2 games, Justin Peters was in there and that for the Dallas game. All right, they go down 3-0, but they tie it up, and then they give up 2 quick goals, and they throw that one away too. And the Oilers game is just inexcusable. A 2-goal lead against the worst team in the Western Conference, who is just scraping by with no kind of momentum, and this is the second time they've lost to them this year.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that speaks of mental fortitude more than anything else.
As I mentioned off camera, that's equate that to the Wizards losing to the Knicks, right? I mean, that would be something you'd look at and say, how did that happen? But Dan, what do you think the Caps need to do better going forward?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before. Like, neither the Nashville game nor the Dallas game really concern me that much. Partly because they're on the road, partly because who they're playing, partly because they actually did some good things in both of those games. The Edmonton one, they're up by 2 goals, I think, right? At home, you're 40 minutes away from going on vacation for a few days. I really think that could be just a total mental lapse for 40 minutes or whatever it was. I don't think that I would say, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z totally different in the second half because we had 40 bad minutes right at the end of the All-Star break. If it continues, after the break, that's a different story. But I would say do what you did for the last month and you'll probably be okay.
Well, Carl Osner actually addressed that in Alex Pruitt's story, and he said, we want to go back, forget about those losses, and remember how good we were playing before that. It was a good hockey team. It was fun to play and fun to watch. I think we have a good shot here. Neil, does that about sum up what you think the Caps are about right now?
Yeah, they're a very good hockey team. I mean, they're a playoff caliber hockey team. I don't know if they're a cup caliber hockey team, but they're certainly a playoff caliber hockey team. They have all the pieces that they need in broad strokes, right? I mean, they have a solid goaltender. They have depth on the blue line. And they have guys up top that can score and control puck possession. I mean, that's the key. They're a couple pieces away. I'd like to see a second-line center come in. That's tough to come by.
Yeah.
But for the first time in a long time, they're not worrying about the defense. They're not worrying about the goaltender or the defense, so they can perhaps focus on getting that missing piece in the top 6 that helps them bring them to the next level. But this is a good hockey team. There's a lot to like about what they're doing right now.
Also, a lot to like about some of our local men's college basketball teams. We have 3 ranked in the top 25. Virginia, obviously, undefeated. We have Maryland and Georgetown that's in at number 21. GW also in second place in Atlantic 10 with a huge showdown against Virginia Commonwealth. All these teams are either tonight.
Yeah, are you going?
I'll be at Georgetown Xavier.
Yeah.
So all these teams are either first or second in their respective conferences. So Dan, I'll ask you, which team has the most upside going forward? Because all these teams have shown they have a chance at least of winning their conferences.
It's an interesting question. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think Virginia pretty clearly is still the best team in terms of
they got Duke coming up though. I mean,
right, but in terms of like the best team and who has the best chance to go deep in March, I would still say it's Virginia. But in terms of kind of improvement from now till the end of the season or from last month to now, I mean, it seems like Georgetown is improving the most, and that sort of makes sense with the number of young guys they've got that they're using. And I mean, Isaac Copeland, a guy that I didn't know that he was about to do this, and now all of a sudden he looks like one of the best, 3 or 4 players on the team. So it seems to me like they have improved the most and probably have the most room to grow still based on how many minutes they're giving to younger guys.
Yeah, Copeland certainly took the longest out of all the freshmen, not counting Trey Morning, to to improve, to show that he's a great player, but clearly he's become that. Mike, which of those 4 teams do you see has the most upside?
I mean, I think it's clearly Georgetown. Virginia, I don't know how much better they can get. They can show me more.
They can be better offensively, right? But
yeah,
that hasn't hurt
absolutely.
them.
Yeah, exactly. And this stretch will tell us a lot.
Yeah.
They're going to be really tested. But Georgetown, this is the best freshman class that's come in since the Green, Hibbert, John Wallace class. I think they're gelling a lot faster than that class even did, and they've been relied on a lot in the early going. If they continue just to progress and take away some of the fundamental stuff, turnovers, some of the bad mental mistakes, I mean, this is a team that could easily win the Big East and possibly do some damage to the tournament.
Neil, which one of the 4 teams do you see as the upward moving?
I think it's Maryland. I mean, I agree with Mike that Virginia is already the best team in the nation, so I don't know how much more upside there. But
You could do that.
I mean, I think from a number standpoint, I think Virginia's probably
defensively,
the best. They're 20 points per game better than average than defensive. But I think Maryland plays in a slightly softer conference, and they're probably a little bit more balanced than Georgetown is. So I think that Maryland has more upside based on those 2 factors.
No one, GW, if they beat Virginia Commonwealth, which is ranked, 14 in the nation, I mean, I think people are sleeping on them a little bit. I mean, they've had some quality wins, obviously Wichita State. They're kind of been overlooked. Is that fair, Dan? I mean, a little bit.
It's fair for a lot of reasons. I think, they're always going to get overlooked in this market, even if they're the best team, because of the size of their fan base, the size of their gym, all those things.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that they've been overlooked. I also think just the quality of opponents, Wichita State is nice, but I think they can't really match the teams that Virginia, Maryland, and Georgetown have all beaten.
Yeah, their RPI is not. I mean, you look at Georgetown's RPI, 13, Mike, strength of schedule 4 in the country. I mean, they play in the conference that's ranked number 2 overall in RPI. They're probably most well situated between, not taking Virginia out of it because obviously they're undefeated, but among those 3 teams, Maryland and GW and Georgetown, they're the best situated for the NCAA tournament.
Clearly, and I think George Washington actually has a little work to do just to make sure they make
because you
the
wrote something
tournament.
a week ago about them having their chances of getting into the tournament.
Yeah,
right?
and their strength of schedule isn't there yet. It'll go up when they face VCU and when they face Davidson and when they face Dayton. But they have to get a couple more wins like the Wichita State win, and they're going to have to seize on one of those opportunities.
Guys, our time is done today, unfortunately. I hope you all enjoy the Super Bowl. Stay safe on your travels home, okay? And we'll do this again soon. Some of you may have farther to go than others. I don't know. I'm not saying you have to go to New York or anything, but those roads could be a little
Be safe going down the stairs.
The black ice.
Inch of snow could be treacherous on my way out.
Okay, for Neil Greenberg, Mike Hume, Dan Steinberg, I'm Gene Wang. Remember to follow us on Twitter @PostSportsLive. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.